The Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Well, Mr Speaker, the pressure is showing. The pressure is showing on Andrew Little. There's only so long you can deal with very, very low leadership ratings before you do wacky stuff, Mr Speaker. We saw it with Phil Goff. We saw it with David Shearer. We probably saw it quicker than we expected with David Cunliffe, to be fair. He sort of went straight to wacky from the word go. But here we are now, Mr Speaker, dealing with Andrew Little, because yesterday he was ripping up 30 or 40 years of monetary policy which has encouraged investment and growth in this country, and saying that he would be the one to set interest rates because he's the one that would make sure that they'd be passed on to New Zealanders, Mr Speaker. Today, he's away again. Today he's got his person out bagging the New Zealand wine industry. So not content with being negative about some parts of the economy, where the wine industry is the new one in the sights. And, Mr Speaker, we've also had the bagging of the immigration sector generally. He was out in Lower Hutt, Andrew Little, last week saying he wasn't convinced that it was a good idea having Chinese and Indians working and actually cooking food in Chinese and Indian restaurants, Mr Speaker. That would seem to be an outrage, and he thinks we should stop that because under his economy he shouldn't have immigration, Mr Speaker. We're looking here, I have to say, at possibly the angriest leader since one that we knew and loved in his day, which was Rob Muldoon. Rob Muldoon, there's no such thing as Crosby Tex. I'd be worried about the Corbyn-Sanders consultancy, which you guys are actually subscribing to the moment. You used to wind us up about Crosby Tex. Well, I'll tell you what, we never went to Corbyn-Sanders for our advice, and if I were you, I'd stop paying, because it's not working for them, and it sure as heck isn't going to work for you over in the Labor Party. Mr Speaker, the problem for the Labor Party is they have completely lost their way. Completely lost their way. And they have, over the last 7 years, declared a huge ranges of crises in New Zealand and presented panicky solutions that New Zealanders have looked at and said, no, that's just silly and panicky. That actually the settings are broadly right. Yes, we have challenges. Countries always have challenges, but you take sensible, long-term approaches. Everybody knows there's no such thing as a free lunch. We all look overseas at countries where they pretend there are simple solutions, where the government just moves the levers around. Countries like Venezuela, countries like Argentina, where they actually go out there and they declare they know better than the world. They know that they can hold the world up, hold the sky up, even though things are changing around them. And that's the sort of policy which Andrew Little is now promoting, Mr Speaker. That's the sort of policy, that's the level of desperation in the modern Labor Party, is that they have said we're in trouble, we're stuck on 30%, so we're going to do wacky things that everybody knows doesn't work, but we're desperately going to try and peel some votes off the Russell-less Green Party and the New Zealand First Party, Mr Speaker. Well, if that's the way they're looking, Middle New Zealand will turn their backs on them, because Middle New Zealand knows that you can't do crazy, silly economic things that actually don't solve any problems, Mr Speaker. Yes, it's tough for the dairy industry right now. This government knows it, because we have dairy farmers and processors in our ranks. We talk to them every day. They know it's tough. We know it's tough. We're working with them to do the things that can be sensibly done, but actually mucking up New Zealand's banking sector right at the time you want them to have confidence in the dairy farmers would be the silliest answer that you could come up with, Mr Speaker. And that's the sort of rubbish that you expect from the New Zealand First Party, but you don't expect it from the largest opposition party in Parliament until you look across and you see that one of their most talented MPs is David Clark. And then you realise what you're dealing with, Mr Speaker, and that's the challenge for the Labor Party. Mr Speaker, the reality is sensible, conservative, fiscal and macroeconomic policies have got this country delivering at a rate in terms of growth, employment growth, top 3 in the OECD, that is actually the envy of most OECD countries since the global financial crisis. That doesn't mean that everything's perfect. Challenges have to be dealt with. But tipping up the New Zealand economic framework to get a headline in the newspaper will be seen for the desperate act that it is.
The member's time has expired.
Mr. Speaker.